So it's about 9:45 a.m. UK time on Tuesday, the 1st of February 2022. This is a video on the horoscope of 4 world leaders, all who seem to be playing an important role in the global rhetoric that's going on at the moment. The first one I want to look at is the horoscope of Vladimir Putin. We do have an accurate birth time, or an approximate birth time for him. Vladimir Putin was born on the 7th of October 1952 at 9:30 a.m. in Petrograd in Russia, making him Libra with Gemini moon and Scorpio rising. But that's only 1/10 of the story. Vladimir Putin was born with the Sun conjunct Saturn. We're in the 12th house, and Mercury conjunct Neptune also in the 12th house. The Sun conjunct Saturn gives him clear boundaries and structures, gives him the ability to handle responsibility and authority, and gives him the capacity, if you like, for coordinating, organising, managing, facilitating. As I age, I'm becoming more and more comfortable with the idea of the Sun conjunct Saturn in a person's chart, especially once they're past 35, 36 years old, at which point Saturn starts to become people's friend. However, Vladimir Putin was also born with Pluto, the ruler of his ascendant, exactly on the midheaven at 22 degrees of Leo, opposite his node on the IC, all squaring his Jupiter. Remember that square to the Jupiter. It's going to be a theme over the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Pluto on the midheaven, especially in Leo, can be very arrogant. It can be power driven. And there's a marked difference between being powerful, where you try and control power, own power, become full of power, at which point the power can't circulate and it gets stuck inside you, hence it becomes corrupt and leads to decay and rot. Or power-filled, where power flows through you, where you are the conduit and the channel for it, but it's not yours. You just help direct it and work with it. I believe that Vladimir Putin has always been someone who's aspired to becoming full of power. And now, Saturn in the sky is about to oppose his Pluto and his midheaven and move into his 4th house of home, motherland, mother, security. And this is going to be starting around the end of February, and it's going to continue through until the end of the year. It's also going to be squaring his Jupiter. This suggests to me, from an astrological level, that a lot of his both aspirations, goals and ambitions to have power in, power over, are going to become strongly examined, and it may be a kind of knee-jerk reaction that he thinks, right, I've got to win, absolutely must win, I die before I surrender. Although the equal and opposite positive side of this is transmutation of power, becoming power-filled and spreading that power into the world. And there is although I'm talking in psychological and astrological terms, there is a literal capacity here, because Putin does control much of the world's gas. Which is fitting, seeing as Jupiter, the gas planet, the gas giant, is square to Vladimir Putin's Pluto, midheaven and node. Gas will be a major bargaining tool over the coming couple of years. It's not just Saturn. Next year, Pluto, Uranus in the sky will be on Vladimir Putin's Jupiter, square his node, square his Pluto, square his midheaven. Long term, I suggest that, bearing in mind that he's now pushing 70, he'll be 70 this year, I think his physical well-being and health is beginning to show signs of creaking at the seams. He's Superman. You know, he makes all those wonderful pictures of being strong and virile. But no one goes on forever. And I suggest that in 2 years' time, he's probably either going to be deposed or take a graceful step backwards. But in the meantime, he wants a legacy. And Vladimir the Great, well, he came to a sticky end. Maybe he's trying to improve on his predecessor. I don't know, but it does seem clear to me that if Vladimir Putin is going to go to war, it's going to be very shortly. Because if he has not gone to war in Ukraine by the end of February, start of March, then that ship has sailed, and I don't think he will. To complement this, I'm also looking at the horoscope of Joe Biden. Now, I'm no fan of Joe Biden. To me, in the post-Trump era in America, Joe Biden is like putting a sticking plaster on a nuclear bomb. But Joe Biden, 20th of November 1942, so he's 10 years older than Putin, 08:30 in the morning in Scranton in Pennsylvania, making him Scorpio with Sagittarius rising and the moon in Taurus. His moon and Vladimir Putin's moon, they don't really get on. Putin's moon is on Biden's descendant and on his Uranus. So there's always going to be a bit of fireworks. There's just no chemistry there. Or rather, the chemistry is there, but it's volatile and it's sparky and they're never really going to get on. Biden's chart doesn't have any of the significant challenges that Vladimir Putin's has. Biden is more malleable. Like Putin, he has the Sun and Mercury, as well as Venus and Mars, in the 12th house. So he also has secret aspirations of power. But the difference is that with Biden it's more covert, not overt. And Biden's issues around power are much less around global domination or power over others. It's more about power in, over and with himself. All of the difficult stuff in his chart, the Sun conjunct Venus and the opposition to Uranus in his chart, it's all square Chiron on his node. So I do believe he suffers, or when younger he would have suffered from feelings of insecurity or inadequacy. However, over this coming year, the single big aspect here is that Pluto in the sky is going to be sextiling his Sun and his Venus for the next couple of years. And unlike most other world leaders, Joe Biden's chart in the next year or two is actually looking better than normal. Now, as I said, I'm not a fan of Biden. He'll be a one-term president, I'm sure of this. Age for no other reason. He's mediocre, but then perhaps America needs something middle of the road and mediocre and less controversial after recent times. But I don't see Biden as sticking his finger into the hornet's nest anytime soon, unless he's pushed. In which case that steely, strong, background hidden Scorpio Sun is going to come out and say, right, if you're going to mess with me, I will deal with you. But it takes a lot to push him to that. This brings me to the horoscope of Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia. Now, I don't have a birth time for him. If any Australian astrologers out there have any idea whatsoever of his birth time, please let me know. You know how to get hold of me. steve@stevejudd.co. But Scott Morrison was born in Sydney, Australia on May the 13th, 1968. If he was born before midday local time, his moon's in Scorpio. If he's born after midday, his moon's in Sagittarius. I'm almost certain that he was born before midday and that his moon's in Scorpio. Which kind of suggests he was born just after a full moon. He's a Taurus if he is with a moon in Scorpio. Taurus with a moon in Scorpio. Moon opposite Mars. Jupiter strongly square his Sun, square Neptune. He was born with the Sun opposite Neptune, T square Jupiter. Putin was born with Pluto on the midheaven opposite the node, T square Jupiter. With Sun opposite Neptune, these people often deal with the world as being the way they want it to be rather than dealing with it the way it really is. It can, on the positive side, lead to a much more compassionate, kind, empathic, intuitive and spiritual way of dealing with the world that has a lot of artistic talent. But it can also lead to delusion, addiction, escapism and avoidance and painting a picture that's simply not real. And when the Sun opposite Neptune, and probably the Sun opposite Moon as well, are squared to Jupiter in Leo, then this can be quite bombastic. Might makes right. There are lots of other nicer aspects in his chart. He has a lovely Mercury in Gemini, Mars in Gemini, reasonably well aspected, strong Saturn in Aries, conjunct the node. But I can't help but focus on the fact that over the rest of this year, Saturn in the sky is going to be squaring his Sun, squaring his Neptune, and getting ready to oppose his Jupiter. And then Uranus is going to hit him next year. So similar to Putin, he's under Saturn's eye this year and Uranus is next. I'm aware that there's an election soonish in Australia, and I cannot see Scott Morrison as becoming Prime Minister for that much longer. He's just a busted flush, I think. He's mismanaged a lot of things in Australia, and he has the, I'm not going to say contempt because that's too strong a word, from those Australian clients I deal with regularly. He has the derision of people there simply for being out of touch with the dynamic and for going on holiday to Hawaii when everyone else is suffering from COVID. In that light of dealing with people who party on while everyone else is suffering, let's come to the horoscope of Boris Johnson. Now, I'm not going to be too hard on him because he's really getting a lot of flack at the moment, and today he's running away to Ukraine to get away for a break from the media scrum in Britain. But he represents the Conservative Party, who have had during lockdown, whilst children have been dying, funerals have been held with no one there, people have been passing away alone. It's the same everywhere in the world. Whilst elements of a Conservative Party have held 16 separate parties and then denied they ever did them, to which to me just shows the absolute and utter contempt to which the supposed elite of the country that I live in, which is represented all around the world of course, but the elite in the country that I live in, it shows the contempt that they hold the common people, and they don't care how many people die as long as they can still party. And that's the truth and the bottom line. And of course other people all around the world will hear that and go, yeah, but it's the same everywhere. Of course it is. But in Britain the hypocrisy is blatant. In other countries, yeah, we're going to party while the poor people die, we don't care, we're the rulers. But that's in the tyrannies and the dictatorships. I live in a country that's supposed to be a democracy, where the elite are supposed to look after those less fortunate than themselves, instead of partying the night away. Boris Johnson was born on the 19th of June 1964 at 2 p.m. in New York, New York. It makes him a Gemini with Libra rising, moon at 0 degrees of Scorpio. His moon is exactly opposite Joe Biden's moon and in conjunct Vladimir Putin's moon. It's interesting that Biden has the descendant at 3 degrees of Gemini, Putin has the moon at 2 degrees of Gemini, Johnson has the sun at Mars at 1 degree of Gemini. I don't think any of them really get on. Boris Johnson's his weak point has always been the women in his life. With a sun opposite Ceres, he has at least, he's been credited, I think it's with 5 or 6 children, although allegedly, rumour has it that there are double that number out there. He may have a number of, his children may run into double figures, no one knows, except him, and even he's not sure. He was also born with Neptune opposite Jupiter. This can create delusions of adequacy. It can create situations where my philosophy is better than anyone else's, and my belief system is strong, and I don't care if the rest of the world's against me because I know I'm right. And it seems to me at the moment, with Saturn squaring his Jupiter and his Neptune literally as we speak, that he is in the eye of the storm. And then in a couple of months' time, Uranus is going to spend a year conjuncting his Jupiter and opposite his Neptune. I have to say that apart from this, astrologically, his chart is quite quiet in terms of external situations. However, when I look at Boris Johnson in terms of the internal situation, his progress chart, which deals with what I call the growth of the soul from within, the progressed sun in his chart is seemingly healthy, but the progressed moon at 7 degrees of Sagittarius is brewing a storm. I think that he's overly influenced by women in his life, both current and past. I don't think he has a rational grip on the world. He, like many other people in positions of power, chooses to see the world the way it is, the way he wants it to be, rather than dealing with it the way it is. I do question his mental, no, not his mental, because his mind is good. Well, actually, I do question his mental state a little bit. I even more question his emotional state. I think he wants nothing more but to run away and write poetry and to try and be a good father. And I think the job's too much for him. I do not see Boris Johnson as being Prime Minister of Britain much longer. He has cultivated the contempt and the derision of so many people now. And he still tries to make excuses for it all. He has lied and cheated. He has been he's lost a number of jobs in newspapers for outright lying. He is known to be circumspect with the truth. Nobody trusts him. He's a loose cannon. And he's not fit to hold office in Britain, in my opinion. Astrologically, I do not think he'll be Prime Minister much longer. I'd be astonished. And in that light, I'm going to be doing a video fairly soon on the likely candidates to succeed him. But the thing with all these global leaders, they all have strong Jupiters. They all aspire to greatness. And greatness has to be earned, not demanded. Same as respect. You can't buy it. You can only earn it. Okay, that's my rant on world leaders only. Over. World leader pretend indeed. Anybody who wants power shouldn't be given it. I think it was Mark Twain said that one. Okay, catch you later, world. Hope this has been interesting. Bye.